On a Thursday morning in October, while sorting through my late husband's library, I found a leather journal hidden between architectural blueprints dated 2019. Inside was a letter in Cornelius's handwriting, dated exactly 2 weeks before his fatal stroke. The letter began, "Our son has stolen $340,000 from my corporate accounts over the past 24 months. I'm Rowena Blackstone, 68 years old." I read that sentence 3 times. Then I set the letter down on my husband's mahogany desk, walked to the kitchen, made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, and sat by the window overlooking our 5-acre estate in Fairfield County, Connecticut. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just watched the October leaves fall and thought about my son, Thatcher, who was at that very moment living in the guest cottage behind my house with his wife Margot and their 16-year-old daughter Eliza. Then I decided to do something about it. But first, I had to finish reading what my husband wrote before he died. 3 years earlier, Cornelius Blackstone had collapsed in his study on August 14, 2022, at 3:47 in the afternoon. Massive stroke. He was 71. We'd been married 45 years. He was one of the most respected architects in New England, with a portfolio that included the Danbury Cultural Center and the restoration of the Hartford Municipal Building. I was a literature professor at Fairfield University for 32 years before retiring. We built our life together. Our home, a colonial revival he designed himself, sat on 5 acres we'd purchased in 1983 for $340,000. The property was now worth $4.2 million, according to the last assessment. Cornelius left everything to me in his will, or so I thought. Now, 3 years after his death, I was holding a letter that changed everything I believed about my family. I picked up the journal again and continued reading. Chad's. The letter. My dearest Rowena, if you're reading this, I am gone, and you found what I couldn't bring myself to tell you while I was alive. 3 months ago, May 17th, 2022, to be exact, I discovered irregularities in my business accounts. Blackstone Architecture and Design had $847,000 in its primary operating account in January. By May, it had $507,000. I'd approved no major expenses. No projects required that level of expenditure. I hired a forensic accountant, Gerald Hutchins, without telling you. I'm sorry for that secrecy. He found that between March 2020 and May 2022, exactly $340,000 had been withdrawn from my accounts in increments ranging from $5,000 to $15,000. The withdrawals happened on the 15th of each month, like clockwork. The signatures on the authorization forms were mine, except they weren't. Someone had forged them. The beneficiary? Blackstone Design Ventures, LLC, a company that doesn't exist beyond a P.O. box, number 847 Westport Post Office. I traced the P.O. box. It's registered to Thatcher. I stopped reading again. My hand trembled slightly as I set down my teacup. Through the window I could see the guest cottage. Smoke rose from its chimney. Margot's white Mercedes SUV, the one they'd purchased used last year for $67,000 in cash, sat in the driveway. They'd been living there for 2 years and 7 months, since January 2023. Just temporarily, Thatcher had said, until we get back on our feet. He'd lost his position at Morrison & Associates Architecture in December 2022. Firm downsizing, he'd explained. Not my fault, Mom. The economy. I'd believed him. I confronted Thatcher once. June 3rd, 2022. He came to my study when you were at your book club. I showed him the bank statements. He cried, Rowena. Our 40-year-old son sat in the chair where you're probably sitting now, and he wept. He told me it was for Eliza's college fund, that he'd made bad investments, that he was ashamed to tell us, that he would pay it all back. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to. But then, on July 29th, I couldn't sleep. I came downstairs around 2 a.m. for water. I heard Thatcher's voice coming from my study. The door was ajar. I stood in the hallway and listened. He was on the phone. His exact words. The old man's getting suspicious. We need to accelerate timeline B. Once he's gone, Mother will be easier to manage. She trusts me completely. We can triple that amount from her accounts within the first year. I recorded it, Rowena. I started carrying a small digital recorder after that first confrontation. Old paranoia, perhaps. The recording is in the false bottom of my desk drawer, along with all the evidence Gerald compiled. I called Vivian Harper the next morning, July 30th, to change my will. I had an appointment scheduled for August 17th, 2022. But as you know, I died on August 14th, 3 days before I could protect you. My vision blurred, not from tears, I was past tears, but from the memory of August 14th, 2022, Cornelius in his study, me finding him on the floor, the phone already dialed to 911, his hand reaching toward his desk drawer. I thought he was reaching for his heart medication. Now I wondered if he was reaching for evidence. Rowena, you are stronger than you know. Stronger than I ever was. I enabled our son's weakness by giving in that first time he asked for money after graduate school, then the second time, then the third. But you've always seen people clearly. You've always known when a student was lying about missing an assignment. You've always known when something didn't add up. Trust that instinct now. In the false drawer, you'll find bank statements showing all withdrawals, forged signature analyses, Gerald Hutchins's full forensic report, the P.O., box rental agreement in Thatcher's name, recordings of 3 phone conversations, a USB drive with additional evidence. I'm changing my will to include an irrevocable trust that protects our assets from exploitation. If I die before that appointment, these documents should give Vivian Harper, my estate attorney, everything she needs to execute my true wishes. Protect yourself, my love. Protect what we built together. Don't let our son's weakness destroy your security. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell you this face to face. I'm sorry I let it go on so long. I'm sorry I'll be gone when you read this. But I'm not sorry for loving you for 45 years. Forever yours, Cornelius Blackstone, July 31st, 2022, N. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the journal. Then I did something that surprised even myself. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a hysterical laugh. Just a quiet sound of recognition. Cornelius had been protecting me even in death, and I'd been oblivious for 3 years. I opened the false bottom of his desk drawer. I'd known about it since 1987 when he'd shown me where he kept my birthday presents, and found everything exactly as he'd described. The USB drive was labeled in his meticulous handwriting. Evidence, Rowena Eyes Only. I plugged it into my laptop. File directory, bank statements, 47 PDF files. Forensic report, Hutchins, 1 PDF, 89 pages. Audio recordings, 3 MP3 files. Forged signatures, 12 image files. P.O. Box rental, 1 scanned document. Blackstone Ventures investigation, 1 PDF, 34 pages. I started with the forensic report. Gerald Hutchins, CPA, CFE Forensic Accounting Analysis Case, number 2022 CH447, Client Cornelius Blackstone, Confidential Executive Summary. Between March 2020 and May 2022, $340,000 was systematically withdrawn from Blackstone Architecture and Design corporate accounts through forged authorization forms. Withdrawal pattern: March 2020, December 2020, $5,000 month equals $50,000. January 2021, December 2021, $10,000 month equals $120,000. January 2022, May 2022, $15,000 month equals $75,000. Special withdrawals: June 2021, November 2021, February 2022. $95,000 funds traced to Blackstone Design Ventures, LLC, a shell company registered April 3, 2020 in Delaware. Principal Officer Thatcher C. Blackstone. Additional findings: evidence suggests Mr. Thatcher Blackstone also accessed a secondary trust fund, Eliza Trust Fund, Eastern 2007, with an estimated $180,000 removal using similar methods. Total suspected theft: $520,000. I set down the report. $520,000. Not the $340,000 Cornelius mentioned. He hadn't known about Eliza's trust fund being compromised. I checked my watch. 10:47 a.m., October 12th, 2025. Through the window, I saw Margot leaving the cottage, getting into her Mercedes. She was wearing what looked like a new coat, camel-colored, definitely cashmere. Probably $3,000 or more. I opened the first audio file. Audio file 1, July 29th, 2022, 2:17 a.m. Sound of door opening, footsteps. Thatcher. It's me. No, he's asleep. Listen, we have a problem. He hired a forensic accountant. Yeah, Gerald Hutchins. He knows about the $340K. No, not yet, but he's getting suspicious. We need to accelerate timeline B. Pause. Thatcher. Once he's gone, and at 71 with his blood pressure, that won't be long. Mother will be easier to manage. She trusts me completely. She still thinks I'm her little boy who can do no wrong. Laughter. Thatcher. The house alone is worth $4.2 million, plus her retirement accounts, his life insurance, the business assets. We're talking $6 million minimum, probably closer to $7 million total. Within the first year after he dies, we can triple what we've already taken. She won't even notice if we're careful. Pause. Thatcher. She's a literature professor, not an accountant. She doesn't understand finance. Never has. Yes, I'm sure. No, she'll sign whatever I put in front of her if I tell her it's estate management or tax optimization. I stopped the recording. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. I'd taught critical analysis for 32 years. I'd published 4 books on Victorian literature and the psychology of betrayal in Dickens and George Eliot. I'd written my doctoral dissertation on deception and self-deception in Great Expectations. And my own son thought I was too stupid to notice him stealing from me. I opened my laptop and created a new document. Investigation Notes, October 2025. Then I called someone I should have called 3 years ago. Dr. Sebastian Price answered on the second ring. Rowena, this is a pleasant surprise. Sebastian had been Cornelius's physician for 20 years and our family friend for nearly as long. He'd been the one to pronounce Cornelius dead on August 14th, 2022. He'd sat with me through the funeral arrangements. He'd checked on me monthly for the first year after Cornelius died. Sebastian, I need to ask you something about Cornelius's death, and I need complete honesty. A pause. Of course. What's troubling you? Did Cornelius have dementia? Any cognitive decline at all in the months before he died? Absolutely not, Sebastian said immediately. Why would you ask that? Did he seem paranoid? Confused? Making accusations that didn't make sense? Rowena, Sebastian's voice became serious. What's happened? Please just answer the question. Your husband's mind was as sharp 3 days before he died as it was 20 years ago. Sharper even. He was reading architectural journals, consulting on projects, attending board meetings. There was no cognitive decline whatsoever. I exhaled. Did he ever mention being afraid of something? Or someone? A longer pause. Rowena, are you safe? Do I need to come over there? I'm perfectly safe. Please, Sebastian, did he mention anything? He called me in July, about 2 weeks before he died. He asked me about how to legally document one's mental competency. He wanted to know what tests would prove he was of sound mind for legal purposes. What did you tell him? I told him he didn't need tests. He was obviously competent, but he insisted. So I referred him to a neuropsychologist colleague. He took a full battery of tests on August 2nd, 2022, scored in the 97th percentile for his age group. He seemed relieved. Did he say why he needed proof of mental competency? No. But Rowena, Sebastian hesitated. He seemed afraid, not of dying, of leaving you alone. He said something strange. If anything happens to me, Sebastian, watch over Rowena. Don't let them convince her she's helpless. She's the strongest person I know. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Sebastian. That's all I needed to know. Rowena, I'll call you soon. I promise I'm fine. I hung up before he could ask more questions. Cornelius had known he was running out of time. He'd documented his mental competency to prevent anyone from claiming his accusations were the product of dementia or paranoia. He'd been building a legal case, and then he died 3 days before his appointment to change his will. I looked at my notes. $520,000 stolen. Confirmed. Shell company traced to Thatcher. Confirmed. Cornelius mentally competent. Confirmed. No will changes executed. Confirmed. Which meant Thatcher inherited everything when I died. Under current Connecticut law, as my only child, he'd receive my entire estate, unless I did something about it. I checked the time. 11:23 a.m. I had a decision to make. I could confront Thatcher now, angry, emotional, without strategy. Or I could do what I'd taught my students for 3 decades. Analyze the text, examine the evidence, understand the antagonist's motivations, and only then determine the appropriate response. I chose analysis. I opened a new document and began creating a timeline. Timeline of deception. March 2020. First withdrawal. $5,000. Thatcher still employed at Morrison & Associates. April 2020. Blackstone Design Ventures, LLC, registered in Delaware. June 2021. Special withdrawal. $35,000. Same month. Thatcher and Margot purchased used Lexus sedan for cash. November 2021. Special withdrawal. $30,000. Same month they took European vacation. Anniversary gift from Margot's parents, they'd said. February 2022. Special withdrawal. $30,000. Eliza's scholarship to Westport Academy. Tuition. $45,000 year. Partial scholarship, they'd claimed. May 2022. Cornelius discovers theft. Hires Gerald Hutchins. June 3rd, 2022. Cornelius confronts Thatcher. Thatcher cries, promises to repay. July 29th, 2022, 2:17 a.m. Thatcher makes phone call about accelerating timeline B. July 30th, 2022. Cornelius calls Vivian Harper to change will. July 31st, 2022. Cornelius writes letter to me. August 2nd, 2022. Cornelius takes cognitive competency tests. August 14th, 2022, 3:47 p.m. Cornelius dies of stroke. August 17th, 2022. Scheduled will revision appointment. Never occurred. January 2023. Thatcher, Margot, and Eliza move into guest cottage. Temporarily. October 12th, 2025. I find the letter. 3 years I'd lived in ignorance. 3 years Thatcher and Margot had lived on my property, eating meals at my table, accepting my financial help for emergencies, all while planning to take everything when I died. I thought about the last 3 years, the small requests. Mom, can you help with Eliza's dental work? $4,500. Mom, my car needs transmission repair. $3,800. Mom, property tax on the cottage is due. $2,200. I'd written every check without question. How much more had they taken from me since Cornelius died? I opened my own bank accounts and started analyzing. 2 hours later, I had my answer. Another $47,300 in emergency help since January 2023. Total theft over 5 years. $567,300. More than $500,000. I sat back in Cornelius's chair and looked around his study. His architectural drawings on the walls. His books on the shelves. His reading glasses still on the desk where he'd left them 3 years ago. I understand now, I said aloud to him. I understand what you were trying to protect me from. Then I picked up my phone and made another call. This one to Vivian Harper, Cornelius's estate attorney. Vivian, it's Rowena Blackstone. I need to schedule an appointment as soon as possible. I found something you need to see. Vivian Harper's law office occupied the 3rd floor of a restored Victorian building on Main Street in downtown Fairfield. I'd been there exactly twice before. Once for Cornelius's will reading in September 2022, and once 6 months later when I'd had questions about estate taxes. Now, on October 13th, 2025 at 2:00 p.m., I sat across from Vivian with the leather journal, the USB drive, and my own handwritten timeline spread across her mahogany conference table. Vivian was 55. With steel gray hair she wore in a neat chignon and reading glasses that hung on a gold chain around her neck. She'd been Cornelius's attorney for 18 years. She'd drawn up our wills, handled property transactions, managed his business contracts. She was reading Cornelius's letter for the second time, her expression growing darker with each paragraph. "Rowena," she said finally, setting down the letter, "I need to show you something." She unlocked a filing cabinet and removed a sealed manila envelope. Across the front in Cornelius's handwriting, "To be opened only if Rowena discovers suspicious financial activity. V. Harper." My hands trembled slightly as I took it. "When did he give you this?" "August 2nd, 2022, the same day he scheduled his appointment to revise his will." Vivian removed her glasses. "He told me not to open it unless you came to me with concerns about Thatcher. He said, if she never finds out, let her live in peace. But if she discovers the truth, she'll need this." I broke the seal. Inside was a 3-page letter and a separate sealed envelope labeled Final Instructions. Cornelius's letter to Vivian, dated August 2nd, 2022. "Vivian, if you're reading this with Rowena present, it means my worst fears have been confirmed. Thatcher has continued his theft, and Rowena has discovered evidence. I'm writing this 12 days before my scheduled appointment with you on August 17th. I pray I live long enough to execute the will changes we discussed. But if I don't, if something happens to me before that appointment, I need you to know my final wishes. Rowena is the strongest, most intelligent woman I've ever known, but she has one weakness. She believes the best in people, especially family. She will discover Thatcher's betrayal, and she will be devastated. She will question herself. She will wonder if she failed as a mother. Please assure her, this is not her failure. This is his choice." In the sealed envelope marked Final Instructions, you'll find my true final wishes for asset distribution. I couldn't risk Thatcher discovering this, so I never mentioned it to Rowena. The will on file, the one that leaves everything to her with Thatcher as contingent beneficiary, that was never my real intention after I discovered his theft. The sealed instructions represent what I truly wanted. Vivian, I'm also instructing you to recommend she hire a private investigator. I believe Thatcher's theft is more extensive than I've documented. I suspect there are other victims, possibly including Rowena herself since my diagnosis. Note, I was diagnosed with early-stage hypertension in March 2022, which Thatcher knows about. I've been on medication. I worry he may have been tampering with it. I have no proof, just suspicion. A father's horrible suspicion about his own son. Please guide Rowena through whatever she needs to do to protect herself. And please tell her I'm proud of her strength. Cornelius. I stopped reading. My vision blurred. Vivian. My voice came out steady despite the storm inside me. Did Cornelius suspect Thatcher might have caused his death? Vivian's expression was grave. I don't know, but I do know this. Cornelius died of a hemorrhagic stroke consistent with severely elevated blood pressure. The autopsy showed his blood pressure at time of death was dangerously high, 220 over 140. Yet he'd been stable on medication for months. Could someone have tampered with his medication? The autopsy couldn't determine that. But, she hesitated. Rowena, Thatcher had access to your home constantly. He knew where Cornelius kept his medications, and a stroke that severe, in someone whose hypertension was controlled? Dr. Price told me at the funeral it was surprisingly aggressive for someone on proper medication. I set down the letter carefully. What's in the final instructions? Vivian opened the second sealed envelope and handed me a single page. Final Instructions. Cornelius Blackstone, prepared August 2nd, 2022. Witnessed by Vivian Harper, Sescrin, and Gerald Hutchins, CPA. In the event of my death before execution of my revised will, I direct the following. 1. Primary beneficiary. Rowena Blackstone receives all property, accounts, and assets currently in my name with the following exceptions. 2. Eliza Trust Fund. $250,000 to be held in irrevocable trust for Eliza Blackstone, granddaughter, accessible only at age 25, managed by independent trustee, not Thatcher or Margot Blackstone. Current trustee recommendation, Vivian Harper. 3. Thatcher Blackstone receives $5,000 as required by Connecticut law to prevent will contest, plus conditional inheritance of $50,000 only if he completes court-mandated financial counseling. He repays all stolen funds with 5% annual interest. He makes formal written apology to Rowena. He maintains steady employment for minimum 24 consecutive months. These conditions must be met within 5 years of my death. 4. Blackstone Architecture Legacy Fund. Remaining assets, estimated $2.1 million after property transfer to Rowena, to establish scholarship fund for architecture students from low-income backgrounds. Annual awards an amount of $25,000 per student. 5. Moral clause. Any beneficiary who contests this will or harasses Rowena Blackstone forfeits all inheritance and receives $1 instead. 6. Investigation. Authorization. I authorize Vivian Harper to recommend private investigation into Thatcher's financial activities and to use estate funds up to $50,000 for this purpose, if Rowena deems it necessary. I make these provisions with full mental competency. See attached neuropsychological evaluation dated August 2, 2022, and with the deepest love for my wife of 45 years. Cornelius Blackstone. I read it 3 times. Vivian, can this be executed now, even though he died before revising his official will? Normally, no, but Cornelius was clever. He had this document witnessed and notarized. He also included the competency evaluation, and most importantly, she pulled out another document. He filed this as a codicil amendment with the probate court on August 3, 2022. It's legally binding as a supplement to his existing will. So the will that was read at his funeral was incomplete. I'm sorry, Rowena. I should have mentioned the codicil then, but Cornelius's instructions were explicit. Reveal it only if you discovered the theft yourself. He didn't want to poison your relationship with Thatcher if there was any chance he was wrong. I sat back in my chair. Cornelius had protected me from beyond the grave. Even in death, even knowing what Thatcher had done, he'd given me the choice to remain ignorant if I wanted to. But I'd found the letter. I'd chosen to know the truth. Now I had to decide what to do with it. You mentioned a private investigator, I said. Vivian nodded and pulled a business card from her desk drawer. This is Harrison Webb, former NYPD detective specialized in financial crimes and elder fraud. He's handled several cases for my clients. Discreet, thorough, and honest. I took the card. Harrison Webb, Private Investigations, licensed in CT and NY. Before you make any decisions, Vivian said gently, you should know what you're getting into. If you hire Webb, if you investigate Thatcher thoroughly, you can't unknow what he finds. Your relationship with your son will be irrevocably changed. It's already irrevocably changed, I said. I just didn't know it until yesterday. There's also Eliza to consider. She's 16, innocent in all this. Which is exactly why I need to know the full truth. If Margot is involved, and that phone call suggests she is, then Eliza might be at risk too. Vivian studied me for a long moment. You sound like a professor about to dissect a text. I am, except the text is my own life, and the antagonist is my own son. I stood and gathered the documents. I'd like to meet Mr. Webb as soon as possible. I'll call him now. Harrison Webb arrived at Vivian's office 45 minutes later. He was not what I expected. I'd imagined someone hard-edged, perhaps cynical. Instead, Harrison Webb was a compact man in his early 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a slight limp that suggested an old injury. Mrs. Blackstone, He shook my hand with a firm but gentle grip. Vivian briefed me on the basics. I'm very sorry for what you're going through. Thank you, Mr. Webb. Please call me Harrison. He settled into the chair beside me and pulled out a leather notebook. Before we begin, I want to be clear about what I do and don't do. I investigate. I find facts. I document evidence. What you do with that evidence is entirely your decision. I don't make judgments about families or relationships. Understood? Understood. Good. Now tell me everything. For the next hour, I walked him through the timeline. The letter, the bank statements, the audio recordings, Cornelius's suspicions, the $567,300 in documented theft. Harrison took notes in careful handwriting, occasionally asking for clarification on dates or amounts. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me directly. Mrs. Blackstone, Rowena, I have to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you prepared for what I might find? What do you mean? In my experience, when there's this much premeditation, this much systematic theft, it's rarely just one family member acting alone. If your daughter-in-law Margot is involved, and that phone call suggests she is, then we're looking at conspiracy, and conspiracies usually have more layers than initially apparent. Are you saying there might be others involved? I'm saying that $567,000 is a lot of money to steal over 5 years without help, without planning, and without spending it in ways that would leave traces. Where did that money go? What was it used for? Who else knew about it? I hadn't thought about that. I'd been so focused on Thatcher's betrayal that I hadn't considered the money's destination. What would an investigation involve? I asked. Harrison flipped to a fresh page in his notebook. Phase 1. Financial forensics. I have contacts who can trace where the money went. Purchases, transfers, accounts. This is legal and won't alert your son. Phase 2. Background checks. Deep dive on Margot. People with nothing to hide don't usually marry into wealthy families and help their spouses commit fraud. I want to know who she was before she became Margot Blackstone. Phase 3. Surveillance. Non-invasive, legal observation of their activities. Who do they meet with? Where do they go? What's their daily routine? Sometimes people reveal more through behavior than documents. How long would this take? 4 weeks minimum, probably 6. I'll provide weekly reports so you can decide at any point whether to continue or stop. And the cost? My standard rate is $200 per hour plus expenses. But Vivian mentioned your husband authorized up to $50,000 from the estate for investigation purposes. That's more than sufficient for a thorough inquiry. I thought about Cornelius, about his foresight, about his final gift of protection. When can you start? I can start preliminary research today. But Rowena, I need you to promise me something. What? Don't change your behavior around Thatcher or Margot. Don't let them know you suspect anything. Can you do that? Can you sit across the dinner table from your son and act as if everything is normal? I thought about 45 years of loving the same man, about 32 years of teaching students to analyze text for hidden meanings, about reading Great Expectations every semester and discussing Pip's self-deception, Miss Havisham's manipulation, Estella's coldness. Mr. Webb, Harrison, I've spent my entire career teaching people how to recognize deception in literature. I think I can manage to hide my own feelings for a few weeks. He smiled for the first time. I believe you can. All right then, let's begin. And Week 1, October 13th to 19th, 2025. Harrison worked fast. Day 1, Tuesday, October 13th. By 8 p.m., he'd sent me his first report via encrypted email. Initial financial trace. Blackstone Design Ventures, LLC, Shell Company, Delaware registration, 0 business activity. Bank account associated with company, Capital One Business, opened April 2020. Deposits match withdrawals from Cornelius's accounts exactly. Funds then transferred to secondary account. Wells Fargo personal checking. Account holders, Thatcher Blackstone and Margot Blackstone, joint. So Margot was directly involved. both names on the account. Day 3, Thursday, October 15th. Second report arrived. Expenditure analysis. Partial. November 2021. 32,400. 2 round-trip business class tickets to Paris. Hotel Ritz reservation. 8,000 in restaurant charges. June 2021. 67,000. Mercedes GLS 450 SUV. Purchased cash from Westport Mercedes. February 2022. 45,000. 1-year tuition. Westport Academy. Eliza's School. September 2020. $28,500. Renovation of guest cottage. New kitchen. Bathroom remodel. Pattern. Money spent on luxury items and lifestyle maintenance, not investments or debt repayment. They'd lied about everything. The used Mercedes was brand new. The Paris trip wasn't an anniversary gift from Margot's parents. The scholarship for Eliza didn't exist. Day 5, Saturday, October 17th. I'd invited Thatcher, Margot, and Eliza for Saturday brunch. I needed to observe them with new eyes. They arrived at 11 a.m. Margot wore a Burberry coat I'd never seen before, probably $2,500. Thatcher looked tired, but smiled warmly when he hugged me. "Mom, you didn't have to go to all this trouble," he said, eyeing the spread I'd prepared. Quiche, fresh fruit, croissants from the French bakery downtown. "Nonsense, I see so little of you these days." I kissed Eliza's cheek. "How's school, sweetheart?" "Good, Grandma. We're reading Great Expectations in English class." My heart clenched. "Oh? What do you think of it?" "I hate Estella. She's so mean to Pip even though he loves her." "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people use others' love as a weapon. It's one of Dickens's great themes." Margot interjected. "Rowena, this quiche is divine. You'll have to give me the recipe." I watched her. Designer sunglasses perched on her head. Manicured nails. Diamond tennis bracelet that definitely hadn't been there last month. "Of course, dear. How was your week?" "Exhausting. Thatcher's been interviewing for positions. 3 meetings this week alone." Thatcher nodded. "Hopefully something will come through soon. The market's tough." "I'm sure you'll find something," I said, pouring coffee. Then casually, "By the way, I've been thinking about downsizing. This house is too large for one person." The effect was immediate. Thatcher's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. "Downsize? Mom, this is your home. Dad built this house." "Exactly. It holds so many memories. Perhaps too many." Margot leaned forward. "Rowena, you shouldn't make major decisions like that while you're still grieving. It's only been 3 years." 3 years and 2 months, I corrected. "I think that's enough time to consider my options." "But where would you go?" Thatcher's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "Some condo? Some—" He struggled for words. "Some assisted living facility?" There it was, the dismissal. The assumption that at 68 I was already incapable of independent living. I was thinking of a brownstone in New Haven, near the university. 2 bedrooms, manageable size. "And what about— what would you do with this property?" Margot asked. "Sell it, I suppose." The real estate agent I consulted said it would fetch around $4.5 million in the current market. Thatcher and Margot exchanged a look. Quick, but I caught it. "Mom," Thatcher said carefully, "don't you think you should discuss major financial decisions with me? I could help you evaluate options, make sure you're getting fair value." "That's kind of you, dear, but I do have financial advisors." "Still, I'm your son. I should be involved in these discussions." I smiled pleasantly. "I'll keep that in mind." The rest of brunch was strained. They left by 1 p.m. At 3 p.m., Harrison sent me surveillance photos. Subject: Saturday, October 17th, 1:47 p.m. Location: Starbucks Post Road, Fairfield. The image showed Thatcher and Margot sitting in a corner booth. Margot's expression was intense. Thatcher looked worried. The second photo was a close-up of Margot's phone screen, taken with a telephoto lens. A text message to an unknown number. "She's talking about selling. We need to move faster. Call me." Day 7, Monday, October 19th. Harrison's weekly report was waiting in my inbox. Week 1 summary. Financial findings. Total traced expenditures, $312,000 of the $567,300 stolen. Remaining $255,300, location unknown, likely secondary accounts or cash transactions. Margot Blackstone, joint account holder on all receiving accounts. Credit cards in both names showing additional $43,000 in charges, 2023-2025. Behavioral observations. Saturday brunch reaction. Clear anxiety about property sale. Text message suggests coordination with unknown third party. Spending patterns continue. New coat, Margot. Dinner at the boathouse, $487. On October 16th. Phase 2 begins. Background investigation on Margot Blackstone preliminary finding. Margot's maiden name listed on marriage certificate, 2013, as Margot Ann Harper. However, Connecticut birth records show no Margot Ann Harper born between 1985 to 1990, her claimed age range. Recommendation. Full background check, including previous states of residence. I read that last line 3 times. Margot Ann Harper didn't exist? Then who had my son married? Week 2, October 26, 2025. Day 9, Wednesday, October 22nd. Harrison called me directly. Rowena, I need to meet with you in person. I found something significant. We met at a coffee shop in Westport, 20 miles from Fairfield. Neutral territory. Harrison slid a folder across the table. Margot Ann Harper is a fabricated identity. The birth certificate she used for your son's marriage license was forged. Good forgery, but fake. It took my contact at the Connecticut Vital Records office 3 days to confirm. Then who is she? Her real name is Margot Elizabeth Riley, born June 14, 1987 in Las Vegas, Nevada. She legally changed her name to Margot Harper in 2012 in Clark County, Nevada. Why would she change her name? Harrison pulled out another document. Because in 2011, Margot Riley was charged with wire fraud and conspiracy to commit financial fraud in Nevada. She worked for a company called Elite Investment Solutions, which turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. They defrauded 47 investors of approximately $8.3 million. My hands went cold. The case was settled out of court. She agreed to testify against the CEO, and in exchange, charges were reduced to a misdemeanor. She paid a $15,000 fine, served 400 hours community service, and was released with probation. 6 months later, Harrison continued, she changed her name and moved to Connecticut. In 2013, she met your son at, he checked his notes, an architecture symposium in Hartford. Thatcher never mentioned she was from Nevada, because she probably told him she was from Connecticut. The fabricated Harper identity includes a fake background, supposedly born in Stamford, raised in Greenwich, parents deceased. It's a clean backstory. No one to verify, no one to contradict. I stared at the documents. Criminal charges. Fraud. Lies upon lies. Does Thatcher know? That's the question, Harrison said. Either he knows and is complicit, or he's being manipulated by someone with significant experience in financial deception. What about the third party, the person she texted? Still working on that. The phone number is registered to a prepaid account, difficult to trace, but I have someone trying to get subscriber information. He pulled out one more document. There's something else. In the Nevada case, Margot Riley had a co-conspirator, someone named Maxwell Reed. He was her boyfriend at the time. He served 18 months in federal prison for his role in the Ponzi scheme. Where is he now? Released in 2014. Last known address, Stamford, Connecticut. The same town where Margot claimed to be from. Harrison, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that your daughter-in-law has a criminal history of financial fraud, a fabricated identity, and possible ongoing contact with a convicted felon in the same geographic area. Whether your son knows any of this, I can't yet say. I sat back, processing. Thatcher had married a con artist, either knowingly or unknowingly, and together, or with her pulling the strings, they'd stolen more than $500,000 from my family. What's our next step? I asked. I need to trace Maxwell Reed's current location and activities. I also need to find those missing $255,000 and... He hesitated. Rowena, I think we should consider installing surveillance at your property, audio recording devices in common areas. If Margot and Thatcher are planning something, we need to catch them discussing it. Isn't that illegal? Not in Connecticut. This is a one-party consent state. As the property owner, you can legally record conversations in your own home. Any evidence gathered would be admissible in court. I thought about Cornelius, about the audio recordings he'd made of Thatcher's phone calls. He'd known. He'd documented. He'd tried to protect me. Now it was my turn to protect myself and Eliza. Do it, I said. I. Duh. Day 12, Saturday, October 25th. While Thatcher, Margot, and Eliza were out, Harrison confirmed via surveillance they'd gone to a football game at Eliza's school. A technical team installed 7 discrete recording devices throughout my property. Smoke detectors in the main house, living room, and kitchen. Picture frames in the hallway. A clock radio in my study. And at the cottage, 2 devices hidden in common areas, all feeding to an encrypted cloud server that only Harrison and I could access. The moment they say anything incriminating, Harrison explained, we'll have it. Date-stamped, time-stamped, admissible in court. That evening I listened to the first recordings, mostly mundane conversation. Eliza practicing piano. Margot on phone calls that seemed innocent, discussing dinner plans with friends, scheduling a hair appointment. Then at 11:47 p.m., after Eliza had gone to bed, Margot. She's serious about selling. Thatcher. She can't. That's our inheritance. That's our future. Margot. Your inheritance isn't guaranteed. She could change her will tomorrow and leave everything to cancer research. Thatcher. She wouldn't do that. I'm her only child. Margot. You need to talk to her. Convince her to put the house in a trust with you as co-beneficiary, or at least get her to sign power of attorney. Thatcher. She's not incompetent. I can't just get power of attorney. Margot. Not yet, but she's 68. Things happen. Falls, dementia, accidents. A long silence. Thatcher, yeah. Margot, what are you suggesting? Margot. I'm suggesting you think strategically. Your mother has $7 million in assets. When she dies, you inherit everything. But if she sells the house and moves, she might spend it all. Or give it away. Or remarry. Thatcher. She won't remarry. Margot. You don't know that. She's still attractive for her age. What if some man convinces her to change her will? Thatcher. This is crazy. I'm not going to... Margot. You're not going to what? Protect your daughter's future? Eliza deserves that money for college, for her future. Your father would have wanted... Thatcher. Don't bring Dad into this. Margot. Why not? He left everything to your mother assuming she'd take care of you. But what if she doesn't? What if she decides you're not worth it? Another silence. Longer this time. Thatcher. What exactly are you proposing? I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking now. Margot was pushing Thatcher towards something darker, something that sounded like elder abuse, or worse. I called Harrison immediately. I need you to identify Maxwell Reed's location. Now. Tonight if possible. Rowena, what's happened? Just find him. I think he's involved. I think he's been involved all along. Day 14, Monday, October 27th. Harrison appeared at my door at 7 a.m. with a file folder and grim expression. Maxwell Reed lives in Stamford, 447 Elm Street, apartment 2B. He works as a financial consultant for a company called Meridian Wealth Management. Is it legitimate? The company is. His role is questionable. But here's the interesting part. Harrison pulled out surveillance photos. This was taken yesterday, Sunday, October 26th at 2:15 p.m. Starbucks on Bedford Street, Stamford. The photo showed Margot sitting across from a man in his late 30s. Dark hair, expensive suit, confident posture. Maxwell Reed, Harrison confirmed. They met for 90 minutes, very friendly, very intimate. He showed me another photo, Margot and Maxwell holding hands across the table. That's not how you meet a financial consultant, I said quietly. No, Harrison agreed. That's how you meet a lover. Week 3, October 27th, November 2nd, 2025. I sat in my study staring at the photographs of Margot and Maxwell for 20 minutes before I could speak. Harrison, I need to know everything about Maxwell Reed, not just his criminal record. Everything. Where does his money come from? What is Meridian Wealth Management? And most importantly, I met his eyes. What is his relationship to Margot, really? Harrison settled into the chair across from my desk. I've already started digging deeper. But Rowena, what I'm finding suggests this is bigger than your son stealing from his father. Much bigger. Show me. He opened his laptop and pulled up a series of documents. Maxwell Reed served 18 months in federal prison, released March 2014. Since then, he's lived in Stamford under his own name, no identity change. He works for Meridian Wealth Management, which is legitimate. He earns approximately $180,000 per year in salary plus commissions. That doesn't sound like a criminal. Wait. Harrison clicked to the next screen. Here's where it gets interesting. Maxwell Reed owns 3 properties in Connecticut. A condo in Stamford worth $650,000, a vacation home in Litchfield County worth $890,000, and a commercial property in Norwalk that he rents out for $12,000 per month. Total real estate holdings, approximately $2.1 million. On a $180,000 salary? Exactly. Even with his legitimate income, the math doesn't work. So I traced his property purchases. Harrison pulled up a timeline. The Stamford condo was purchased in October 2020 for $625,000. Cash purchase. No mortgage. October 2020, 6 months after the first withdrawal from Cornelius's accounts. The Litchfield property was purchased in August 2021 for $850,000. Again, cash. August 2021, right after several large withdrawals totaling $95,000. The Norwalk commercial property was purchased in March 2022 for $780,000, partially financed, but with a $400,000 down payment. Cash. March 2022, during the period of systematic $15,000 monthly withdrawals. Harrison, are you saying... I'm saying that Maxwell Reed's property purchases align almost perfectly with the timing and amounts of money stolen from your husband's accounts. The $255,300 that we couldn't trace? It went to real estate purchases under Maxwell Reed's name. My throat tightened. So Margot and Maxwell have been working together all along. It appears so. But here's what disturbs me most. Harrison pulled up another document. I ran Maxwell Reed through a national database of financial fraud cases. In the past 10 years, there have been 7 families in the Northeast who reported similar patterns of theft by in-laws or stepchildren. All cases were settled privately or dropped due to lack of evidence. 7 families? 5 in Connecticut, 1 in Massachusetts, 1 in New York. Each case involved someone marrying into a wealthy family, gaining access to accounts over a period of years, and systematically draining assets. Total estimated theft across all 7 cases, $4.3 million. I felt sick. You think Margot and Maxwell have done this before? I think they're professional con artists who've been running this scheme for over a decade. Your family is the 7th target. And based on the pattern, each time they get caught or close to being caught, they settle quickly, move to a new identity, and find a new victim. But Margot has been with Thatcher for 12 years. They have a daughter. Harrison's expression grew even more grave. Rowena, I need to show you something else, but it's going to be difficult to hear. He pulled up a birth certificate. Birth certificate, State of Connecticut. Name, Eliza Margaret Riley. Date of birth, March 15th, 2009. Mother Margot Elizabeth Riley. Father Maxwell James Reed. I stared at the document, not comprehending at first. This is a mistake. Eliza's last name is Blackstone. Her father is Thatcher. Look at the date, Harrison said gently. March 15, 2009. Thatcher and Margot didn't marry until June 2013. Eliza was born 4 years before their marriage. But after they married, Margot filed for legal name change for Eliza and listed Thatcher as the adoptive father on amended birth certificate. It's all legal, but biologically Eliza is Maxwell Reed's daughter, not Thatcher's. The room felt like it was tilting. Does Thatcher know? I don't believe so. The original birth certificate was sealed after the adoption. The amended certificate lists only Thatcher as father. Unless someone specifically requested the original sealed record, which requires legal cause, he would have no reason to know. Eliza wasn't Thatcher's daughter. My granddaughter, the girl I'd loved for 16 years, helped raise, supported through school and activities, was the biological child of a convicted con artist. And Thatcher had no idea. Harrison, what about the marriage certificate you mentioned earlier? You said Margot used a forged birth certificate. She did, for her own birth certificate claiming to be Margot Ann Harper. But Eliza's birth certificate as Margot Riley is real, which suggests Margot had Eliza before she created the Harper identity, before she met Thatcher. So the plan was, meet a wealthy man, pretend to be someone else, marry him, present Maxwell's child as his own, gain access to family money, drain it systematically, move on to the next target when necessary. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, I could see the cottage. Lights were on. Eliza was probably doing homework. Thatcher was probably reviewing job applications. Margot was probably texting Maxwell, planning their next move. My family was a lie. Built on lies, sustained by lies, destroyed by lies. I want to talk to Thatcher, I said. Alone, without Margot knowing. Rowena, that's risky. If Margot suspects, she won't. I'll make it seem natural. A mother-son lunch. We used to do that every month before Cornelius died. I'll suggest reviving the tradition. Harrison considered. All right, but I want you wired. If the conversation goes wrong, if he threatens you or reacts violently, I need to know immediately. Thatcher would never hurt me. You didn't think he'd steal from you either. He was right. Day 17, Thursday, October 30th, 2025. I called Thatcher at 9 a.m. Hi, Mom. He sounded distracted. What's up? I was thinking, we used to have lunch together every month, remember? The corner bistro in Southport. I miss that. A pause. Yeah, I miss it too. Let's revive the tradition. Tomorrow, just you and me. Noon, another pause, longer this time. Sure, that sounds great. Should I bring Margot? Actually, I was hoping for just the two of us. Mother-son time, like old days. Okay, yeah, I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat with my hands trembling slightly. Harrison's technician arrived at 10 a.m. to fit me with a small recording device, barely larger than a button, clipped inside my cardigan. It's voice-activated, the technician explained. 20-foot range. Everything will be recorded and transmitted to Harrison in real time. If you feel unsafe at any point, say the phrase, I think I left my reading glasses at home. That's the distress signal. Harrison will be in a van 2 blocks away and can be there in under a minute. I practiced the phrase twice. Then I spent the rest of the day preparing what I needed to say to my son. Day 18, Friday, October 31st, 2025, 1200 p.m. The Corner Bistro was a small French restaurant we'd been coming to for 15 years. The owner, Claude, greeted me warmly. Madam Blackstone and Thatcher, it has been too long. We ordered. I chose the Nicoise salad. Thatcher ordered steak frites and made small talk while we waited. The weather, Eliza's school, Thatcher's job search. Any promising leads? I asked. A few. There's a firm in Norwalk that might have an opening for a senior architect. Interview next week. That's wonderful, dear. The food arrived. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Then I said, Thatcher, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. Okay. How much money did you take from your father? The fork clattered onto his plate. What? From his business accounts. From the trust fund he set up for Eliza. How much did you take? His face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, denial, panic, calculation. Mom, I don't know what you're... $520,000, I said calmly. That's what the forensic accounting report shows. $340,000 from Blackstone Architecture and Design. $180,000 from Eliza's Education Trust. Plus another $47,300 you've taken from me since your father died. Total, $567,300. Thatcher's face drained of color. How do you... I opened my purse and pulled out a folder, set it on the table between us. Inside were copies of bank statements, the forensic report summary, and screenshots of the shell company registration. Your father knew, Thatcher. Before he died, he knew. He hired an investigator. He documented everything. He was going to change his will to protect me from you. Mom, please, I can explain. Can you? I kept my voice low, calm, professorial. Can you explain why you stole more than $500,000 from your own father? Can you explain why you forged his signatures? Can you explain why you created a fake company to hide the theft? Thatcher's hands were shaking. He looked around the restaurant. We were in a corner booth, relatively private, but other diners were nearby. Not here, he whispered. Please, not here. Then where, Thatcher? In my home, where you've been living rent-free for nearly 3 years while stealing from me? In the cottage your father's stolen money renovated? His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. Tell me why. He was silent for a long moment, then quietly, because I'm not him. I'll never be him. Your father? I tried. I got the architecture degree. I worked at good firms. But I wasn't talented enough, wasn't visionary enough. Every project I designed was derivative. Every client who hired me was really hiring Cornelius Blackstone's son, not me. So you stole? No. I mean, not at first. At first I just borrowed. Small amounts. I thought if I could fund my own projects, prove myself independently, I could pay it back. But then what? He wiped his eyes. Then Margot said we could do more. She said Dad would never notice. She said it was practically my inheritance anyway, so what did it matter if I took it now instead of later? Margot suggested the theft? She helped me set up the company. She knew how to move the money without triggering alarms. She said she'd learned about corporate finance in her old job. What old job? Some investment firm in Nevada, before we met. I pulled out the next document from my folder. Margot's criminal record from Nevada. You mean Elite Investment Solutions? The Ponzi scheme that defrauded 47 people of $8.3 million. Thatcher stared at the document. What is this? Your wife's criminal record, wire fraud, conspiracy. She was charged in 2011, served probation, and changed her name to avoid her past. That's impossible. Margot's from Connecticut. Her maiden name was Harper. She grew up in Greenwich. No, Thatcher. Her real name is Margot Elizabeth Riley. She's from Las Vegas. She created a fake identity to hide her criminal past, and she targeted you because your family had money. No. Thatcher shook his head. No, you're wrong. We met at an architecture symposium. We fell in love. We built a life together. I pulled out the next document, the original birth certificate for Eliza. Did you build a life? Or did she manipulate you into one? He took the birth certificate with shaking hands. Read it once, twice, 3 times. This says Maxwell Reed is Eliza's father. Maxwell Reed, Margot's partner in the Nevada fraud case, the man she went to prison with, the man she's been meeting secretly for the past several weeks. I pulled out Harrison's surveillance photos. Margot and Maxwell at Starbucks, holding hands. Intimate conversation. Thatcher made a sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a gasp. Just a broken exhalation of pain. Eliza isn't mine? Biologically, no. Margot had her 4 years before you married. Then filed for legal adoption and changed Eliza's name to Blackstone. You are her legal father. You raised her. You love her. But Margot lied to you about her parentage. Thatcher sat perfectly still, staring at the photographs. How long have you known? He whispered. About the theft? I found your father's letter 8 days ago. About Margot's past? 3 days. About Maxwell? 2 days. And you're telling me now because I need to know, Thatcher. I need to know if you're complicit in all of this, or if you're a victim too. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know about her past. I swear to God, Mom, I didn't know. I thought she loved me. I thought Eliza was mine. I thought, his voice broke. I thought I finally had something Dad couldn't overshadow. A family, a daughter, something that was mine. The restaurant noise faded away. I reached across the table and took his hand. Tell me everything, Thatcher. From the beginning. No more lies. For the next 40 minutes, Thatcher talked. He told me about meeting Margot in 2013 at the Hartford Symposium. How charming she'd been, how interested in his work, how she'd seemed to see him, not just Cornelius Blackstone's son. He told me about their whirlwind courtship, how she'd introduced him to Eliza, then 4 years old, and said her ex-husband had abandoned them, how Thatcher had fallen in love with both of them. He told me about the marriage, the adoption, the life they'd built, and then he told me about the money. It started small, he said, 2020 during COVID. My firm was struggling. Margot said Dad had so much money, couldn't I just borrow a little? Just $5,000 to cover expenses until things improved. But it didn't stop at $5,000. No, because once I'd done it once, it was easier the second time. And Margot was so good at justifying it. Your father would want you to have this. You deserve this. Think of Eliza's future. She manipulated you. Oh, she convinced me I was doing the right thing, that taking the money was smart financial planning, not theft, that Dad was holding back my inheritance unfairly. Did you know he discovered the theft before he died? Thatcher nodded miserably. He confronted me in June 2022. I lied to him. I told him it was just a few mistakes, that I'd pay it back. But then Margot said, he stopped. What did Margot say? She said Dad was getting too suspicious, that we needed to accelerate our plans. I didn't know what she meant then, but she said if Dad changed his will, we'd lose everything. She said we needed to make sure that didn't happen. My blood ran cold. What did you think she meant? I don't know. I didn't want to think about it. Then Dad died, and I thought it was natural. A stroke. He had high blood pressure. Dr. Price said it was sudden but not suspicious. Thatcher. I gripped his hand harder. Did Margot have access to your father's medications? His eyes widened. She helped him sometimes, when you were out. She'd bring him his pills with water. She said she wanted to help take care of him. When did this start? July 2022, maybe late June. She said you were stressed with his health issues, and she wanted to lighten your load. Exactly the period after Cornelius confronted Thatcher about the theft. Exactly the period before Cornelius died of an unexpected stroke. Thatcher, I need you to think very carefully. Did Margot ever say anything about your father's death that seemed off? He thought for a long moment. Then, after the funeral, when we were alone, she said something like, well, at least he went quickly. No suffering. And now we don't have to worry about him changing the will. And you didn't find that strange? I thought she was just trying to comfort me, to find a silver lining. His face crumpled. Oh, God. Mom, you don't think... I don't know what to think yet. But I know your father believed he was running out of time. And I know he died 3 days before his appointment to protect me from theft. And I know Margot had access and motive. Thatcher pulled his hand away and put his head in his hands. I've destroyed everything. Everything Dad built. Everything you trusted me with. And I didn't even know I was being used. Thatcher, look at me. He looked up, face ravaged with grief and shame. You made terrible choices. You stole from your father. You lied to me. You broke trust that may never be fully repaired. Those are facts. I know. But I also think Margot saw your weaknesses, your insecurity about your father, your desire to prove yourself, and she exploited them. You are guilty of theft and deception, but you may also be a victim of a professional con artist. What do I do now? You tell me the truth about everything, and then you help me prove what Margot did. How? I pulled out my phone and showed him the audio recordings Harrison had captured at the cottage. The conversations about me selling the house. The discussions about accidents and strategic thinking. Thatcher listened, his face growing paler with each exchange. She's planning to hurt you, he whispered. Or worse. I won't let her. Mom, I swear, whatever I've done, I won't let her hurt you. Then here's what we're going to do. Day, November 1st, 2025. The plan, Harrison, Vivian, and I. And I met with Thatcher at Vivian's office that evening. Mr. Blackstone, Vivian began formally, you understand that you've committed multiple felonies. Wire fraud, forgery, theft from an estate. You could face 5 to 10 years in prison. Thatcher nodded, looking broken. I understand. However, Vivian continued, you may also be a victim of financial and emotional manipulation by someone with a documented history of fraud. If you cooperate fully with this investigation, testify against Margot and Maxwell, and make restitution, we may be able to arrange a plea deal. Probation instead of prison. Conditional inheritance instead of disinheritance. I'll cooperate with anything. I just want... His voice cracked. I just want to protect my mother. And Eliza. Harrison leaned forward. Thatcher, I need you to wear a wire. Go back to the cottage tonight and confront Margot about Maxwell. Get her to talk about the theft, about the plan, about anything she and Maxwell have been planning. You want me to trap my own wife? We want you to document the truth, I said quietly. For your sake and for Eliza's. That girl deserves to know who her parents really are. Thatcher was silent for a long moment. Then, okay, I'll do it. That night, November the 1st, 2025, 10:47 p.m. Audio recording from cottage, transmitted live. Harrison, Vivian, and I listened from Harrison's surveillance van parked 2 blocks away. Thatcher. Eliza's asleep? Margot. Yes, finally. She had so much homework. Why? Thatcher. I need to talk to you about something. About someone. Maxwell Reed. Long silence. Margot. Who? Thatcher. Don't lie to me, Margot. I know you've been meeting with him. I know who he is. I know what he is to you. Margot. Thatcher. I don't know what you're talking about. Thatcher. He's Eliza's biological father. Another silence. Then, Margot. Who told you that? Thatcher. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you lied to me. About everything. About your past, about your name, about our daughter. Margot. Voice changing, becoming colder. Our daughter? She was never yours, Thatcher. She's Maxwell's child. I just needed you to be her legal father. Thatcher. Needed me? Jesus Christ, Margot. Did you ever love me at all? Margot. Love. Bitter laugh. Thatcher, you were a job. A very profitable job. You had access to money. You had a rich, dying father. You had a trusting, naive mother sitting on a $7 million estate. Of course I didn't love you. In the van, I felt my heart breaking for my son. Thatcher. The money, all of it, that was your plan from the beginning? Margot. Maxwell and I have been doing this for 12 years, 7 families, over $4 million total. You were just target number 7. And you were perfect, so desperate to prove yourself, so eager to believe someone saw you as more than just Cornelius Blackstone's disappointing son. Thatcher. You used me. Margot. I used your weakness, your insecurity, your greed. You wanted that money just as much as I did. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim. Thatcher. And my father? What about his death? A very long silence. Margot. What about it? Thatcher. You had access to his medications. You helped him take his pills, and then he died of a stroke right before he was supposed to change his will. Margot. Thatcher, what are you accusing me of? Thatcher. Did you kill him? Silence. That's Margot. Your father was going to ruin everything. He hired a forensic accountant. He was going to disinherit you, maybe even press charges. Maxwell and I had invested 3 years into this. We'd already purchased properties with the money. We couldn't let him destroy our plans. Thatcher. Oh my God, you actually… Margot. It was simple. His blood pressure medication, lisinopril 40 mg daily. All I had to do was replace it with different pills. MAO inhibitors that interact catastrophically with his regular medication. Add a little stress, a little exertion, and nature takes its course. Margot. He had a stroke, Thatcher. Very sad. Very natural for a man his age with hypertension. No one suspected anything. In the van, I couldn't breathe. My husband, my Cornelius, murdered. Thatcher. You killed my father. Margot. I protected our investment, and it worked perfectly. He died, Rowena inherited everything, and we've been living comfortably while planning Phase 2. Thatcher. Phase 2? Margot. Once Rowena is gone, which won't be long given her age and certain accidents that might occur, you inherit $7 million. Maxwell and I split it with you, and we all go our separate ways. You get your third, Maxwell and I take ours, and Eliza is set for life. Thatcher. You're insane. Margot. I'm practical. Your mother is 68. Falls happen. Medical emergencies happen. And you're her devoted son who'll inherit everything. It's perfect. Thatcher. I won't let you touch her. Margot, laughing. You already have, Thatcher. You've been stealing from her for years. Who do you think the police will believe if something happens to her? The devoted son with a history of theft, or the innocent daughter-in-law trying to protect her mother-in-law? Thatcher. I'll tell them everything. Margot. Tell them what? That I killed Cornelius? You have no proof. That medication bottle was destroyed years ago. And even if you did tell them, you'd go to prison for theft. Either way, you lose. Thatcher. At least my mother would be safe. Margot. Would she? Because Maxwell has contacts, people who could make her accident look even more convincing, people who could arrange things while you're sitting in a prison cell unable to protect her. Thatcher. You're threatening to kill my mother. Margot. I'm explaining reality. Now you can cooperate. Keep playing the devoted son, help us execute Phase 2, and walk away with $2.3 million. Or you can fight us, go to prison and watch your mother die anyway. Your choice. Harrison stopped the recording and looked at Vivian. That's confession to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and terroristic threats. We have more than enough. Vivian was already on her phone. I'm calling Detective Lieutenant Morrison at Connecticut State Police. He handles major crimes. I sat frozen in the van, Cornelius's face vivid in my mind. His kindness, his brilliance, his final desperate attempt to warn me. And this woman had murdered him with calculated precision. Rowena, Harrison's voice was gentle. Are you all right? No, I said quietly. But I will be, once she's arrested. November 2nd, 2025, 6:47 a.m., the arrest. Connecticut State Police arrived at my property at dawn. 6 officers, 3 unmarked cars, Detective Lieutenant James Morrison leading the operation. Harrison and I watched from my study window as they surrounded the cottage. Thatcher had spent the night at a hotel. We couldn't risk Margot suspecting anything after their confrontation. He'd told her he needed space to think, would be back in the morning. Instead, he was in the surveillance van with Vivian, providing real-time information about the cottage layout. Detective Morrison knocked on the cottage door. Through the surveillance audio, we heard Margot's sleepy voice. Who is it? Connecticut State Police. We need to speak with Margot Blackstone. A pause, then the door opened. Margot stood in a silk robe, hair disheveled, looking confused and beautiful. The perfect picture of an innocent woman woken by unexpected police. Is everything all right? Is this about Thatcher? He didn't come home last night. Margot Elizabeth Riley, Morrison said formally, you are under arrest for the murder of Cornelius Blackstone, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and grand larceny. The color drained from Margot's face. I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Margot Blackstone, and I haven't... Morrison held up the arrest warrant. Your legal name is Margot Elizabeth Riley, formerly convicted of wire fraud in Nevada, 2011. You used a false identity to marry Thatcher Blackstone in 2013, and we have audio evidence of you confessing to murder. He nodded to another officer who began reading Miranda rights while cuffing Margot's wrists behind her back. You have the right to remain silent. Margot's eyes darted around, calculating, searching for escape. Then she saw me standing in my study window. Our eyes met across the lawn, hers filled with rage. Mine remained steady. This is her doing, Margot screamed. That old woman set me up. She's lying. Ma'am, you're making this worse for yourself, Morrison said. Where's Thatcher? Thatcher! Margot twisted in the officer's grip. Tell them this is crazy. Tell them! But Thatcher wasn't there. As they led Margot to the police car, she fought, screaming obscenities, threatening lawsuits, demanding her lawyer. The last thing I heard before they closed the car door was her voice, shrill with fury. You'll never prove anything, you dried-up old bitch! Never! The car drove away. Silence settled over my property. Then the cottage door opened again, and Eliza appeared, still in her pajamas, face pale with shock. Grandma? Her voice was small, frightened. What's happening? Where are they taking my mother? I crossed the lawn and wrapped my arms around my granddaughter. Come inside, sweetheart. We need to talk. The conversation with Eliza, we sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made breakfast for her countless Saturday mornings, where I'd taught her to bake Cornelius's favorite lemon cake, where she'd done homework while I graded papers. Now I had to destroy her world. Eliza, what I'm about to tell you is going to be very difficult to hear, but you deserve the truth. She clutched her mug of hot chocolate, made exactly the way she liked it, with extra marshmallows, and nodded. I told her everything. About Margot's real identity, about the theft, about Maxwell Reed being her biological father, about the confession to murder. I showed her documents, but spared her the most painful details. When I finished, Eliza sat perfectly still, her hot chocolate untouched and cold. So my mother is a murderer, she said finally, and my father isn't really my father, and my entire life is a lie. Not your entire life, I said gently. Thatcher is your legal father. He raised you. He loves you. That's real. But he stole from you. From Grandpa. Yes. He made terrible choices, but he was also manipulated by your mother. And Eliza, this is very important. I took her hands. None of this is your fault. You are innocent. You are loved. You are my granddaughter, and that will never change. Tears streamed down her face. How can you still want me, after everything? Because you are not your mother's crimes. You are not your biological father's sins. You are Eliza Margaret Blackstone, a brilliant, kind, talented girl who had no part in any of this. What's going to happen to me? You're going to stay here with me and Thatcher. We're going to get you into therapy. We're going to help you process this. And we're going to make sure you have a future that's built on truth, not lies. And Mom? I hesitated. Your mother will face trial for murder. The evidence is overwhelming. She'll likely spend the rest of her life in prison. Eliza nodded slowly, processing. Then, good. If she killed Grandpa, if she was planning to hurt you, then good. She broke down sobbing then, and I held her while she cried for the mother she'd thought she had, the family she'd believed in, the innocence that was gone forever. November 3rd, 2025. Maxwell's arrest. The next morning, Connecticut State Police arrested Maxwell Reed at his Stamford condo. He'd tried to run, packed a bag, withdrawn $40,000 in cash, bought a one-way ticket to Mexico City. But Harrison had alerted airport security, and Maxwell was apprehended at JFK Airport 14 minutes before his flight departed. The evidence against him was substantial. Financial records linking him to the properties purchased with stolen money, surveillance footage of meetings with Margot, cell phone records showing hundreds of calls between them over the past 12 years. And most damning, a safety deposit box in his name containing forged documents, blank prescription pads, and a detailed ledger documenting all 7 families they'd targeted since 2013. The ledger listed Family 1, 2013-2015, Harrison Family, Greenwich, CT, $340,000, Family 2, 2015-2017, Montgomery Family, Boston, MA, $580,000, Family 3, 2017-2018, Chen Family, Stamford, CT, $290,000, Family 4, 2018-2019, Whitmore Family, New York, NY, $750,000, Family 5, 2019-2020, Davidson Family, Norwalk, CT, $420,000, Family 6, 2020-2022, Sullivan Family, Hartford, CT, $610,000, Family 7, 2020-2025, Blackstone Family, Fairfield, CT, $567,300 total, $3,557,300. Maxwell and Margot had stolen over $3.5 million from 7 families in 12 years. The Blackstone family was simply their latest victim. November 15th, 2025. Legal proceedings. Vivian called me into her office to discuss the legal situation. Rowena, the prosecutor, has offered Thatcher a plea deal. If he testifies against Margot and Maxwell, provides full cooperation, and agrees to make restitution, they'll reduce charges to grand larceny. He'd face 2 years probation, 500 hours community service, mandatory financial counseling, and full restitution of $567,300 with 5% annual interest. No prison time? The prosecutor believes Thatcher was manipulated, and his cooperation has been invaluable. The wire recording is the centerpiece of the murder case. Without it, Margot might have beaten the charges. What does Thatcher want to do? He wants to accept. He knows he deserves punishment, but he wants to be there for Eliza. I thought about my son, his weaknesses, his crimes, but also his genuine remorse, his willingness to make things right. What about the restitution? He doesn't have that kind of money. Vivian smiled slightly. Actually, that's where it gets interesting. Cornelius's codicil left specific instructions. If Thatcher cooperates fully, admits his crimes, completes therapy and financial counseling, and maintains employment for 24 consecutive months, he becomes eligible for conditional inheritance. How much? $100,000 from Cornelius's scholarship fund, enough to make partial restitution. The rest would be paid through garnishment of his wages over 10 years. I sat back. Even in death, Cornelius had planned for redemption. Not easy redemption. Thatcher would pay for a decade, but possible redemption. Tell Thatcher to accept the deal, I said. December 2025, February 2026. The trial. Margot's trial began on December 3rd, 2025. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Audio confession to murder. Forensic evidence linking medication tampering. Financial records documenting the theft. Testimony from 6 other victim families. Thatcher's testimony about Margot's manipulation. Maxwell's ledger documenting the entire scheme. Margot's defense tried to claim entrapment, argued the audio was illegally obtained, suggested Thatcher was the true mastermind. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Verdict on February 14th, 2026. First-degree murder, guilty. Conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Wire fraud, guilty. Grand larceny, guilty. Identity fraud, guilty. Sentence, life in prison without possibility of parole. Maxwell Reed, who'd cooperated for a reduced sentence, received 25 years for conspiracy, fraud, and accessory after the fact. As they led Margot from the courtroom, she looked at me one final time. I met her gaze calmly. She'd taken my husband. She'd stolen my money. She'd tried to destroy my family. But she hadn't broken me. And she never would. 6 months later, August 2026. I stood on my back porch at dawn, holding a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise paint the Connecticut sky in shades of gold and rose. The cottage stood empty. Thatcher and Eliza had moved into the main house with me. We were learning to be a family again, broken, scarred, but healing. Thatcher had found work at a small architecture firm in New Haven. Nothing glamorous, but honest work. He attended therapy twice a week and financial counseling once a month. Each paycheck, 20% went toward restitution. He would never fully repay what he'd taken, but he was trying. Eliza was in intensive therapy, processing the trauma of learning her entire childhood had been built on lies. She'd changed schools, too many whispers at Westport Academy. Now she attended Fairfield Prep and was thriving. She called Thatcher Dad, without hesitation, and she'd started calling me every night before bed, just to say goodnight. Dr. Sebastian Price visited weekly for dinner. He'd become a surrogate father figure for Thatcher, a grandfather figure for Eliza. Cornelius would have approved. I'd sold 3 properties I no longer needed and established the Cornelius Blackstone Foundation for Architectural Excellence. The endowment? $2.1 million annual scholarships, $25,000 each, to students from low-income backgrounds. 20 students had received funding this year, 20 futures built on Cornelius's legacy, not destroyed by Margot's greed. I'd also started a support group for elderly victims of financial fraud. We met Tuesday evenings at the community center. 15 members now, all with similar stories, children, in-laws, caregivers who'd stolen from them. I shared what I'd learned. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Verify relationships. Protect your assets. Most importantly, being elderly doesn't mean being helpless. 1 year later, October 2026. On what would have been Cornelius's 75th birthday, I visited his grave. The cemetery was quiet, autumn leaves drifting down from the old oak trees. I set fresh flowers on his headstone, white roses, his favorite, and sat on the bench beside it. "Hello, my love," I said aloud. "I have news." I pulled out a letter I'd written. "Dear Cornelius, it's been 4 years since you left me. 1 year since I found your letter and discovered the truth you were too afraid to tell me while you lived. You were right about everything. Thatcher had stolen from you. Margot was dangerous. You were running out of time. But you were also wrong about one thing. You thought I'd be weak without you. You thought I'd need protection. You thought I couldn't face the truth alone. My darling, I am not weak. I never was. You taught me that through your final act, leaving me evidence, leaving me choices, leaving me the power to decide how to use the truth you uncovered. Margot is in prison for life. She'll never hurt anyone again. Maxwell is behind bars. The properties he bought with our stolen money have been seized and sold. The proceeds went to the other 6 families they victimized. Every family got restitution. Thatcher is broken but healing. He's working honestly for the first time in years. He's being a real father to Eliza. He comes to me weekly and talks about you, not about your success, but about your kindness, your patience. The father he wishes he'd appreciated while you were alive. Eliza is thriving. She wants to study architecture, like you. She has your eye for detail, your passion for beautiful spaces. Your legacy lives in her. As for me, I'm 69 years old. I volunteer at the cancer center where you spent your final weeks. I mentor young women at the university. I run a support group for fraud victims. I travel to places we always planned to see together. I'm not lonely. I'm not helpless. I'm not the naive literature professor Margot thought she could manipulate. I am Rowena Blackstone. I am your widow. I am a survivor. And I am finally at peace. Thank you for your final gift, not just the evidence that helped me seek justice, but the faith that I could handle the truth, the belief that I was strong enough to fight back. You were right, my love. I was. I miss you every day. But I'm okay. Forever yours, Rowena. I folded the letter and placed it beneath the flowers. The morning sun broke through the clouds, warming my face. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Thatcher and Eliza approached, carrying their own flowers. We thought you might want company, Mom, Thatcher said quietly. Grandpa would have wanted us all here together, Eliza added. I stood and embraced them both, my imperfect, damaged, healing family. Yes, I said. He would have. We stood together at Cornelius's grave, 3 generations bound by love and loss, and the long, difficult work of redemption. I sat in my study as the sun set, the same study where I'd found Cornelius's letter exactly 1 year ago. The leather journal was still on my desk, preserved now in a protective sleeve. Vivian had offered to keep it in her safe, but I'd refused. It belonged here, in this room, where Cornelius had written it, where I'd found it, where my old life had ended and my new life had begun. I opened my own journal, the one I'd started keeping after the arrest, and wrote my final entry, October 12th, 2026, 1 year since I found the truth, 1 year since everything changed. I've learned that age is not weakness, that trust must be earned, not assumed, that family can betray you and strangers can save you, that justice sometimes requires patience, planning, and the willingness to do what's necessary. I've learned that I am stronger than I ever imagined. Cornelius once told me I was the strongest person he knew. I didn't believe him then. I was a literature professor, gentle, intellectual, not someone who fought battles or confronted evil. But I was wrong. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to be a victim, refuse to accept lies, refuse to let fear silence the truth. Margot thought I was weak. She thought she could manipulate me, steal from me, maybe even murder me. She underestimated the quiet power of a woman who loved her husband enough to honor his final warning, who loved her family enough to fight for what was right, even when it meant destroying what was comfortable. The greatest victory isn't revenge. It's peace. And tonight, for the first time in 4 years, I have it. I closed the journal and walked to the window. Outside, Thatcher was teaching Eliza to use Cornelius's old telescope, pointing out constellations. Their voices drifted up, excited and warm. My phone buzzed. A text from the cancer center. 3 new patients signed up for your support group. Thank you for everything you do. Another text from Harrison. Just thought you should know. Thanks to your case, Connecticut passed new elder fraud protection laws. You made a difference. I smiled. Cornelius's legacy wasn't just architecture. It was justice. It was protection for others who might have suffered what we suffered. It was a widow who refused to be destroyed by betrayal. I made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, the same tea I'd made that first morning when I found the letter, and sat in Cornelius's favorite chair. The house was full of life again, full of hope, full of the quiet strength that comes from surviving something terrible and choosing to build something better from the ruins. I raised my teacup in a silent toast. To you, Cornelius, thank you for teaching me I was strong enough. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Thank you for 45 years of love. The evening breeze carried the scent of autumn leaves through the open window. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang 7 times. And I, Rowena Blackstone, 69 years old, widow, professor, grandmother, survivor, I was finally, completely, peacefully free.